Okay, welcome everybody. This is the APIs workshop, and today you will learn how to fetch data from anywhere on the internet and display it on your website. So let's get started. First off, I want to explain what exactly an API is. An API can be a bunch of different things, but most simply, it's you as a developer getting access to data from a different server or a different service and using it in your own app. So to explain this, I think better than a graphic, I can just show you guys practical examples of APIs around the internet. So what I'm going to do is, actually this is the wrong Chrome window. Yep, I'm here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to my personal website. So Varun and I both have this feature on our website. And this feature allows anybody to see what exactly we're listening to on Spotify at this moment. So I'm gonna go in Spotify, and I'm actually gonna change my song, and let's see what happens on my website. So what I've used here is the Spotify API, and the Spotify API allows you to get all your Spotify data. And what you can do with that, so it looks like my sister's listening to something. I'm gonna invade her Spotify by making me listen on this computer. So just say the words, girl. Okay, that's too loud. Mac is being a bit unresponsive, but I think if I refresh the page, we should see, yeah, FML by Arizona Zervas right here. So the coolest thing about this is that you're allowed to connect to different services around the internet. And every app uses an API. So if you look at the Enlight website, we use an API to log you in with Google or GitHub. We use an API to get, whenever you submit a comment or you submit a project after you finished it, we use an API, which is basically a piece of code that allows us to interact with our server. And that's really complex, but hopefully this workshop will break it down. And before we get started, I just want to say what exactly an API stands for. It stands for Application Programming Interface. And that basically means, once again, that it allows you to fetch data and interact with a server or some sort of service online. And every single app needs to have APIs to run and have dynamic data and be interactive. And that is what we're going to be introducing ourselves to today. Any questions on that before we get started? Feel free to unmute yourself or ask in the chat before we start. What we're going to be building today is essentially a personal dashboard. So what we've put together here is, if I refresh this page, you'll see that it took a second for the latest headlines to load. And that's because we're actually fetching them from the New York Times. This shout out to Varun for showing me this API. It's super awesome. If you click on any one of these links, I'm just gonna open this in a new tab, we will get taken to the New York Times article. So how exactly did we do this? We're gonna be doing that in this workshop. So as you can see, I loaded all the top stories on the front page of the New York Times, and that is on my website. And today we're gonna build a similar app where you'll be able to fetch the latest articles from the New York Times. And then in the future, you can make it more advanced. And I wanted to show it to you in the context of a personal dashboard. So a bunch of people have had ideas of having their own productivity dashboard where it would show the weather, the latest headlines. Maybe they're thinking about integrating the To-Do app. I know Oliver integrated the To-Do app and the weather app in his project capstone at the end of the cohort. And that was super awesome. So this is just another way of doing something like that. And hopefully seeing an API in the context of a website will help you understand it better. So to get started, we need to sign up on New York Times. And most APIs, they will require you to sign up to get an API key, which is basically a password for authenticating and using that API. So I'm gonna send a link in the Discord in just a second. So if you can go to developer.newyorktimes.com/docs. I'm dropping it in the Discord right now. And oh, you'll actually get taken to this not found link. But basically, I'm just gonna sign out. I'm signed in, but you should be taken to this site and click on Get Started on the top right. And this is gonna take a while, but after you click on it, for everybody to get on the same page, but we'll wait for everybody to get it. And if you can't get it, you can just use my API key for now, just for the sake of this demo. But try and sign up, because usually when you use any API online, you will want to register and authenticate yourself. Same thing with Spotify. You would have to like get a special API key that goes with your account, or any other app that you're trying to use. Strava, the Google API, GitHub, every service has an API, and they usually require you signing up and getting an API key. So if you click Get Started on the top right, click on Create Account. Once you create an account, create your account, and then you'll get a confirmation email. So you click on that, the usual deal, and then sign in. And let me know when everyone has signed in onto the New York Times Developer API dashboard. So just like put a thumbs up, or actually in the chat be like, I'm signed in, or like say whatever you want. Just like let me know some way that you're in. Sweet, Peter's in. Wait, Grant's in. It should say your, after you sign in, it should say your email on the top right, I believe. Let's see.
Wait, did you say we have to create an account to do it? Okay.
So it should say your email on the top right, just how it shows mine. Rune pointing out my email I made when I was 12 or 13 years old. Yeah, I still use the same one. It was the same email I used for college apps and all. I didn't really care. I have more professional emails, but I still love the OG one. We got Peter and Grant so far. Make sure to send a message in the chat once you've signed in, and shows your email at the top right. Nisreen's in, hacker voice. Aiden's in, Naveed's in, Jenna's in. Oliver's email is lagging. Okay. We'll wait one more minute for you, Oliver, and then we're moving on. Erica's in. Liv, lagging too. Okay, got it. Dolan's in. Okay, dope. Okay, so once you're in, what you want to do is you want to click Get Started. Actually, no, you don't want to click Get Started. You want to go to Apps. So click on your email and then click on Apps, and click on New App. So once you're at this screen, New App, name this whatever you want. So I named mine Personal Dashboard, but I'm just going to create a new one right here. So I'm going to write like Cohort, but you can really name it whatever you want. You can do like your personal website. I don't know. I don't care. Put something for your cohort name and your description. It's gonna be like test. And then scroll all the way down and click on all the APIs you want to enable. Right now, we're probably only going to use the Top Stories API. But in the future, if you want to get like, I don't know, you want to search for New York Times articles, get the most popular articles, get movie reviews, turn all those on. But right now, I only need this for the sake of this workshop, and I'm only going to turn this one on. So once you do that, scroll all the way up and click on Create. So once you get to this page and it shows API keys, send a message in the chat and say that you got your API key. So got API key. Naveed's got it. Sweet. Liz got it. Grant, Peter, Aiden, Nisreen. Can you say again? You lagged. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to click on the top, click on Apps, Dolan, and then click on New App. Once you click New App, it'll ask you to fill up your app name description. Scroll all the way down, make sure Top Stories is enabled, and then click on Create. And then you should get taken to this screen. Sweet. I think mostly everyone has got it, so we will move on. what we have to do right now is just remember this key, and you can copy this key by just clicking copy to clipboard, and that will make sure it's saved in your like your copy paste, your clipboard thing. Yeah, so you can just paste it whenever you want. So we're gonna make sure to copy that and just keep it because we're gonna come back to it very soon. So now let's actually start our project. Let's start our project by heading over to Replit, like we always do for all our workshops, and create a new HTML, CSS, and JavaScript project. Or if you want to build off of your personal website or another Replit project, just open that up. Just make sure it's in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'm going to rename this to News API Demo. You can name it whatever you want. I'm also going to change my title to Personal Dashboard because that's what I want to build in the future. But once again, this can be whatever you'd like. Send a chat and literally just say ready to code when you're ready to code and you're at this screen. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like we're all ready to code. We're gonna go in and let's first write our markup, so our HTML. So I'm gonna type in a h1 tag. I'm just gonna say, here are the latest headlines. You can name it, you can literally change this text to whatever you'd like. This is what I want like my title text to be. And actually I think that's a little too big. I'm gonna make it like H3, but you can make it whatever you'd like once again. Then what we wanna do is we wanna add a div. And this div should have an ID of something that we're gonna reference in JavaScript. So I'm gonna name it headlines. Feel free to name it headlines, but you can name it whatever you'd like. Once again, just make sure to reference that same ID in the JavaScript and you'll get there very soon. So I'm gonna add that div. So right now we have all our markup, believe it or not, to get started. But I really don't like this font and it really annoys me. So I'm just gonna change that really quick. I'm sure you guys got it down by now, like how to change fonts and stuff. So I'm just gonna do this super quickly. And I think you can just copy over code from your personal website if you'd like. And yeah, I'm gonna set a max width, similar to how we did in the personal website, just so when we open it in full screen, it doesn't like extend the whole way. And I'm also gonna change the color to a grayish color. And in order for my max width to work, sorry, to center it, I need to set a margin of auto. So after you make all the changes you'd like, this is how mine looks like, but you can style it up all you'd want super quickly, just take your time. But yeah, comment in the chat, ready to fetch data, once you're all ready with adding the H3 or like whatever headline text you had and the div with the ID. And you've made all your style changes. Sweet. Okay. Looks like I'm so glad everybody's on the same page and we're able to move at a moderate pace. So starting off, JavaScript has this API called the Fetch API. And the Fetch API allows us to fetch data from anywhere on the internet. And to use this API, we need to, let me pull up the Mozilla thing. So I'm gonna do fetch API JavaScript. So I'm gonna pull up the documentation for this, just so we can get a better idea of what exactly this API does. So if you take a look at the documentation on my screen, it looks like we fetch data from a certain URL. Then once we get it, we take the response and we parse it, or we sort of read it in terms of JSON. And JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It sounds complicated, but it really isn't, and I will show you exactly what it is when we test it out with the New York Times data. And once we get this JSON data, we have it as a normal JavaScript object. So instead of a JavaScript object notation, it gets converted to a normal JavaScript object that we can actually edit and manipulate. So if you go back to the New York Times page that we were just on, right? We were just on this page where we had our app name and our API keys. So hopefully our API key should still be copied to our clipboard. But I want you to come to this page and click on APIs on the top. Once you click on APIs, scroll all the way down and click on Top Stories API. You hopefully enable this when you're creating the app on New York Times. And as you can see, New York Times also has some really helpful documentation here. It says an example call, api.newyorktimes.com/svc/top stories/v2/world.json, API key equals your key. So you can get a bunch of different like news stories for different section values. You can do arts, automobiles, books, from business, fashion, food, home, health. So all these different sections. But I want to get the top in the world news. But you can choose to do that for any other thing. You just have to change that one word in the URL. So I'm going to copy this. Oh shoot! So what I should do first is I'm going to copy this where I am over here. I'm going to paste it. I'm just going to add 2 slashes before it just to make it a comment, just so I have this as a reference. And I'm going to go back because we copied it, but then that also removed our API key from our clipboard. So I'm going to go back to our app and I'm going to copy our API key too. And then I'm also going to paste it into our JavaScript file. So once you have both of these URLs, you have the URL of the news articles that you want to fetch and your API key commented out in your JavaScript file. Just comment ready.
Hey, Samay, one question.
Yeah.
How is the fetch API different from something like this news API, or is it the same?
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna actually, that's a really good question. We're actually gonna see what this news API does right now. So it looks like everybody's ready. We're gonna actually copy this, open up a new tab, paste it in, but don't click enter just yet. Go back to your replit and copy this API key that you have for your app. Go back, and then instead of your key, paste in your actual API key and click enter. And now you should see something pretty cool. It should render like this. And this is a little crazy. And believe it or not, this is the data that you're fetching. And once you see the screen, you can see that status, okay, copyright, New York Times company, section world, subsection Africa, title. Coronavirus is battering Africa's growing middle class. So you can see that there's all this data, but it's so hard to read. And we can't really, we don't really understand what's going on here, right? But we have some intuition that we're getting news data. And this essentially is the API. And when we use the fetch command in JavaScript, or fetch API in JavaScript, that's basically a function in JavaScript, we can use that function to fetch all of this JSON data and then display it on screen. So that fetch function, as Varun asked, was a function built into JavaScript that allows us to fetch JSON from anywhere in the internet. So now that we have this screen, just comment saw JSON if you're at this page. Just want to make sure everybody was able to see it. I actually have a Chrome extension. I think Oliver sent something related to that that allows you to parse it. So I have the same thing what Oliver has. If you click parsed, you can actually see it in a really nice format. And this is really cool for just seeing APIs on the fly in your browser and seeing what exactly is the data that you're fetching. And you can see that we got 36 results, and we have multiple articles, and we have multimedia with these different images. So if I open this in a new tab, we can actually get the header image of every single New York Times article on the front page. So if you wanted to, you could create like your own New York Times reader if you'd like, using your own interface. And I think that would be a really cool project. But as you can see, we have all this data. That's cool. But how do we actually use it in our app? And the answer to this lies with using the fetch function. So to get started, what you would like to do is store the URL that we just hit in a variable. So I'm just going to copy and paste this URL that we just checked out. And I'm going to say let URL equals the URL that we just copied in quotes. And this will allow us to store the URL that we need to fetch the data from. Then we can go ahead and start to use the fetch API in JavaScript. I'm going to do fetch URL. As we saw in the document, I don't have the documentation pulled up, but it uses something called a promise in JavaScript. So basically, in its most simplest terms, let me just type this out real quick. So then response.json. So what this is saying right here is saying fetch all the data from this URL, then take whatever you get, which is, I think, a string, and convert that into JSON. So take that string and recognize it as JSON or this JavaScript object notation. And once we have that JSON, we can return that data in a normal JavaScript object. So then we're going to do another promise, so another .then. And I'm just going to name this data. So we can just do data, arrow function again, opening bracket, enter. And I'm going to do console.log data. So I know that was a lot. And just to recap, what we're doing here is we're fetching all the data from this URL that we just hit. We are converting it to JSON, and then we're returning a JavaScript object. And what is that JavaScript object? Just click run, and you'll see exactly what it is. So it looks like something is up. Why did this not console log? So we can see that URL.then response.json.then data console log data. Let's see. So just need to see what exactly is wrong here. Maybe I'm not able to see it, but then response.json.then data. We should be able to console log this. I'm going to look up the documentation of the fetch API one more time, just to make sure I am not going crazy. But I must be missing like something syntactical. Just going to copy this real quick and come back. So fetch URL, we have the URL.then response.json.then data console log data. Okay, that is really weird. Varun, do you see anything that's wrong here?
I'm trying to figure it out myself.
Yeah, all good. Let's just try to use the copy pasted example from the documentation.
Just put a parenthesis at the end. Just missing that.
Yeah. Okay, that is not working for some reason. Let me open up in a new tab. Yeah, half of just figuring out how this will work is looking at like debugging it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm inspecting and I'm checking the console. Oh, sweet, it actually logged everything here, but it didn't show up in Replit. Okay, that's really weird. I think it might be because it's really big, so that might be a reason, but I'm not sure if it shows up in here. If it shows up in here for you, that's awesome. If it doesn't, go to your site, inspect, and then click on the object that it prints out. But try and write what I have here. So fetch URL dot then response arrow function response.json, then dot then data console log data. So I want everyone to take the curly braces away. The code worked for me as well. Yeah, okay. So I want to check if it was just the curly braces, but I really doubt that. Thanks for the feedback, guys. All right, let's try that, I guess. Oh, missing. Oh, just a missing parenthesis? One sec.
Try taking away the semicolon.
Oh, okay, yeah, it worked. That is very weird. Something to look into after. But the stresses of coding live are real, guys. Definitely, you guys will figure that out one time or another. Maybe like when you're teaching a friend or something. But there we go. We have the data here, and yeah, let's go ahead and say got data when you've gotten data. Thank you, Liv, for sending that, and Nisreen. Syntax can be very annoying. I'm going to test if this works by the time you guys get that working. Okay, this works too. So you can have curly braces. Just for anyone that's not working for, just I'll send this. I know somebody else sent it, but this is working as well. So it looks like mostly everyone got it working and they got the data. That's awesome. So now we actually have to display it. And if you open a new tab and you look at the data, you can see that everything is formatted and you can see it really nicely. And that we have this object, right? And this object has a bunch of different variables. There's copyright, last updated, number of results, and then an array. An array is basically a list at its most like simplest form. And if you look at this, you can see that there are multiple different like snippets of data or objects, as you say, in the array. And each one of these sort of like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're all objects within an array. So it's all groups of data within an array. And you can see that there's the section, the subsection, the title, the abstract. And then if you open it, you can see more detailed information about the article. But I think for the sake of just like a simple news displayer, we just want the title and maybe the description and the URL. So let's go ahead and access that data. So the number, like the first thing that we need to do to access this data is map over everything in this array. And map can be sort of like complicated at first, but basically what map does is it goes to an array. So it goes through a list of items and it goes through each one and runs a set of instructions on each object within an array or each element within an array. So we're going to be like, on every time we like, it'll go through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It'll go through every single element in the array. And what we want to do is we want to extract the title, the abstract, and the URL, because that's the data that we need and that we're going to be displaying on our website. So let's go ahead and do that and follow along as I code. So I'm going to be data.results. And I'm doing data.results because you can see the array starts with this variable called results. And then that is set equal to an array of length 14. And as I said before, the function that we're about to write, map, goes through each element within the array. So data that results dot map, and then I'm going to say, I can name this whatever I want. But for now, I'm just going to name it article. And this will return whatever, like, sort of whatever object that it's on, it will return that object. And you'll see exactly what I mean in a second. So I'm going to do article, error function, brackets. And now we specify the instructions that we want to run on every single object that we go through. So I'm going to console log just article, or actually let's do article.title. And if I run this, you'll see that I'll go through all the data. Let me refresh this page. And it'll go through all the data and it'll return all the titles of the articles that it has fetched. So I'm going to go back to this. And I want everyone to comment got titles once they've gotten titles. And if you have any questions so far, feel free to unmute yourself or ask in the chat. And yeah, thanks for Varun for answering all these questions so quickly.
Yo, Samay,
Yeah.
do you want to explain how the dot operator works here for this?
The dot operator?
Yeah, like how it knows that.
Yeah.
Might be confusing.
So the dot operator basically works like you have this big object, right? And you want to go within it and you want to get data that's inside the object. So if you use, if you have an object and you do like dot something, like the variable name, you're able to access it. So that we're getting article, because that's the name that we've given for every single element in our array. And we're saying dot title. So we get the title for each one. And this is the same way we've done stuff like document.body in like past workshops. The document is the object and that body is like the variable or the element that we are trying to edit within that main object. Hey, Peter, and you think you can unmute yourself and tell me what error you got? I think chances are a lot of people might have the same error and would love to help out.
I got an error, so I can paste it in the chat. It's this error over here.
Were you able to get the data, the raw data beforehand?
Yeah, and then when I type in the next thing, it crashed.
Okay. Do you think you can look at your code one more time? Is it right, like within the brackets, right after the console log, and you're just doing data.results.map? Chances are it's just like a syntactical error, I believe. So
Okay.
I can copy and paste this into the chat just so you can replace it. And anybody else who's having this problem, they should probably do the same and see if it's solved for them.
Peter, if you're using an IDE, you can paste this in, and it'll basically check for those like small syntactical errors. If you're using like the VS Code or something, that might help too.
Peter, I think it's your ad block actually. If you could turn off ad block, it might work.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh.
No.
Thanks, Varun. Can we continue? I know that it looks like Oliver and Jenna only got the titles. So if you've got titles, just comment got titles in Zoom. Naveed's got it, Grant's got it, Nasreen, sweet. Erica, you got a security error?
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Is it like cross origin something?
It says security error, blocked a frame with origin. And that kind of,
were you able to get the raw data before?
I think so.
Like
But when I check the console now, it says it can't find the variable data, but not entirely sure. Hang on.
Okay. I'm just gonna send out what I have right now, just so you can follow along, and then we can probably figure out what went wrong after. But I wanna make sure you're able to get this. So, Peter, it still didn't work for you. Yeah, we can help you fix that later on after the workshop. But just for the sake of time, we're going to move on. But I sent my code there. So if you want to replace all of your code with the code that I just sent, see if that works. And if it still doesn't work, we'll be there to help after. So right now we have all the article titles that are being logged right here. And they're awesome. We just need to figure out how we can add them to our actual site. So we can do that right here. Once we get the article title, that means we can get the article description and the article URL. So to do this, let's start off by typing, can anybody remind me what is the tag to use a link in HTML? So if you wanted a link to something in HTML, what's the tag you need to use? href, sweet. So Peter and Oliver both got it, awesome. So what we need to do is, Oliver, okay, next time it's not fair, Oliver, you're a mentor, so you can you can answer that. But to start, let's start by creating an A element in JavaScript. So instead of just typing in the A tag in HTML, in JavaScript, it's a little different syntax. You would want to type in let or var. I like let better, but let A equal document dot create element, and then parentheses A. So right here, we're creating an A tag in JavaScript. We haven't added it to our page yet, but we're just creating it. And you can name this variable whatever you want, as long as you're consistent wherever you use it. So you want to type that in, and that will allow you to create an element. And I think someone talked about href. So Peter talked about href. So we have an A tag, but how do we link something in that A tag? And we need to have an attribute called href, exactly what Peter sent in the chat. So we would want to do a.setAttribute. This is a function within JavaScript. I looked this up beforehand. Once again, this is I don't have this memorized, but you can just literally look up how to create an A tag in JavaScript and set it equal to a link. And I found a Stack Overflow post that answered this. So a.setAttribute, href, and then I'm gonna do article.url. Because if you look at the data that we console logged out, if you go to results and click on any result, you'll see there's an article.abstract, there's a title, and there's also a URL. So we want to get that URL. And now that we've got the URL of the article, we want to get the text of the article, get the title of the article. And if you remember, within an A tag, we have href, we have the link. So like within an A tag, if we were just doing this in HTML, it would be href, like whatever, nytimes.com, I don't know what the URL is. And then it's gonna be like text, and then it's gonna be closing A tag. So how do we define this text? And we're gonna do that by doing a.innerHTML and set that equal to article.title. Sweet. Now we have an A element that was created. We set an attribute of href. So we set the article URL as an attribute to this A tag, and we set the inner HTML of the A tag equal to the article's title. But now, how do we add this to our site? If I run this, you'll see nothing is happening. I want to add this to my website, and you will need to actually append it to the div ID equals headlines that we created before. So if you look at this index, we want to add all these A tags within this div. And to do that, what we would want to do is go all the way up here, say let's headlines, or you can name this whatever you want. Set that equal to document.getElement by ID, and set this equal to the ID that you used. So once again, I use the ID of headlines here, but you will want to use the ID that you used here. So basically, once again, as Varun explained in his past workshops and the other things that we've been explaining, what we're doing is we're basically getting this whole div tag, and we're setting it equal to a variable in JavaScript. And then once we're ready, we can literally do headlines.append child. So we're appending the 8 and then put A as a parameter. So we're appending this A element that has a link set equal to the article's URL and the inner HTML set equal to its title. And we want to say that add this element into our website within that 2 div tags, and do that for every single result in the data, every single article in the data results array. And now, if you run this, I'm just going to open a new tab because it doesn't seem to work for me in, yeah, awesome. So we got all the titles for every single like of those 14 articles, and if you click on any one of them, it will take you to that New York Times equivalent. So this is, we're going to do like some styling and polish it up a bit, but once you've got titles on website, okay, so Nasreen, just comment got titles on website once you've got it. And Nasreen has an error. All of mine are undefined, or mine are blank. Okay, so let's try and debug this. So if you're able to console log article.title, that means the problem is not there. It's probably with what you're doing with the A tag. So you're going to make sure you have let A equals document.create element A, and set an attribute that has the article URL. Nasreen, do you want to unmute yourself and like tell us like where is this, like is there all text that says undefined on your website, or what is exactly?
Basically, it's like one long like link, but the text is all undefined. Actually, let me see if I can click on it. Yeah, and then it just refuses to connect because but they're like links and it's just undefined, like strung together all the way around.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely fix that. I'm gonna actually send, for now, I'm gonna send my code in here, but later on we can definitely figure out what was wrong. So if you want to comment out your code and just use my code for just setting the A element, and also below that you got to do headlines that append child. So those are the 4 lines of code that you need within your map.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Let headlines equals document that get element by ID headlines. Yes, that's exactly what you put, Liv. And just make sure your ID was headlines and index.html. Liv, do you want to like unmute yourself and what you think the problem is? We can figure it out really quick.
I ran it and it just says here are the latest headlines, and it's just like a blank screen.
Okay. Did you try and copy and paste the code that I sent? And then later on we can comment out your code, and later on we can see what exactly was wrong with your code. So you'll understand what went wrong. And then that should work. But right now we're just gonna move on. What I want to do real quick is, I think it's really cool to have the description, but before we do the description, let's make these links look better. So I'm going to go to our style, and I'm going to go to target all the A elements, so all the link elements. And I am going to set that equal to display block. And right now, I think it's, I forgot what the default is for A. Oh, it's display inline. So that's why all the text is being squeezed together, because it's allowed to be inline. We're saying display block, and if we run that, every line, every like link will be on its own line. So that's what display block does. Then I don't like the blue color, so I'm just gonna make it 333, like the gray color that I like. You can make it whatever color you would like. And then sweet, I'm gonna add some margin because it's kind of all cramped together. So I'm gonna add margin of 16. I'm gonna add margin top of 16 pixels and a margin bottom of 16 pixels. And if I run that, you'll see that everything is spaced out. And if you click on any one of these, it will take you to the equivalent New York Times article. One more thing I want to show you guys before we start to answer questions and help you guys add more stuff to this simple demo. I want to get the description. So you can do let, description would just be normal text. So I would do that in a paragraph tag. So let p equals document dot create element p. So p stands for paragraph tag, and I'm not sure if we've learned this tag yet, but it would just be like a normal HTML tag, and you can just put text in it, and it's just made for text. So we're going to do that, and we do p.innerHTML equals article.abstract. And I got article.abstract by looking at the data that we printed out. So if you look at the inspect element, you can actually analyze what data we're actually fetching. So the console, open up the object, results, I'm just gonna open up the first result, and you'll see abstract, and it has the description of the article. And one more thing I wanted to point out is that there's so many cool things. If you do .multimedia, you can actually get the images of the actual article. But for now, this will do. So if I run this, you'll see, oh, why didn't this work? Can someone tell me in the chat why didn't this work? So I created an element with the p tag, and I set the inner HTML equal to the abstract, so equal to like the description of the article. But why didn't this work? You didn't append the element. Awesome. Who said, who's a no href gang? Dolan, that's close. But hrefs are for a tags, and p tags, they can have attributes like classes and stuff, but you can't set an href to a p tag because it's not a link. It's just made for text. But good thinking though. So if you do headlines dot append child p. So same thing what we did with a. And actually, do we want to add this before? Well, let's see what happens. So we run this. We'll see that we get the description above the title. And you can see how sequential JavaScript is. It appends the p tag before the a tag, but we don't want that to happen. We want to put the description underneath the title. So now, if I run this, you'll have the title, and then you have a description. So if I take you to this in a new tab and refresh the page, there we go. We have the latest headlines. If you click on it, it'll take you to the equivalent New York Times article. This will update every single minute as soon as like articles change on the New York Times website, because you're fetching it from the same data source that NewYorkTimes.com fetches its data from. So the servers are the same. There's still New York Times computer has all of these articles like in their database. But what we're doing is we're actually going straight to that server, fetching the data and displaying it how we want to display it. And the same way New York Times is doing it as well. So NewYorkTimes.com, they're taking this data from their API and they're displaying it on their homepage. And I'm just curious. I want to go to the NewYorkTimes.com homepage, and I want to go on the world page. I want to see how close are our top articles. I think it's really cool to see that. So I'm going to click on world. And let's see, do we actually have like real-time data? And let's see. So India bans nearly 60 Chinese apps. Iranian missile blows up. Coronavirus is battering Africa's growing middle class. And if you look at this, those are the top 3 articles that we fetched using our API. Pretty cool, right? I always am amazed by like all of these APIs that we can use, and it makes our apps so much more powerful. Yeah, not very delightful, Oliver. There's actually this one website that shows only uplifting news, and I forgot what it was called, but it was kind of cool. So I'm gonna Google it after this. Just remembered of it. But yeah, any questions on this? I want you to comment finished app when you have what I have on my screen. So you have the title, and you have the description, and you have the link set to it. Let's go. Awesome. I'm glad for those people who are like running into problems before, they were able to figure it out. Okay, Liv, we will fix this, fix your thing very soon, right after. Erica, why is this considered an app and not a program? You can consider it in any way you'd like. You can consider an app or a program or a website. I like saying app because app is short for application. And what we essentially did is we built an application that fetches data from New York Times. And I think you can say that that is a app, but it's definitely a very subjective choice. Naveed, here's the code. I will be sending this replit right after this workshop in the Discord as well, so you can take a look at that. But does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself for this. And any questions on how everything we did in this workshop worked. And if you have like any thoughts of how to improve this or things you want to add to this, and I can help lead you, like Bruno, I can help lead you in the right directions for that.
At what point did you stop using like the tools that the API gave you, and like we started using just our own variable names to like interpret the data? Headlines, for example, like is headlines just a name that you created, or is that something that you had to use in the documentation of the API?
Yeah, so the only thing that you have to use in the documentation for the API is the link that you fetch the data from and the names of how the data is returned. So I can name this whatever I want. I can name this, like, I can literally replace article with post, or I don't know, headline. I can change this to whatever I want. Like I'm just literally gonna name this 1, 2, 3, and I'm gonna go to post, and I'm gonna go over here. I'm just gonna change it where I use. They're just variable names, so they don't really matter. And if I go here and make this ID 1, 2, 3, just like how I reference over there, the site is gonna work. So you can see it renders right here. It really doesn't matter what ID you use or what you use in your own code. It only matters that when you fetch the data, you're making sure to fetch the, like when you fetch the data, you're making sure to use it according to their documentation. So you need to have .title. If I do like dot something else, if I do like, I don't know, dot something else like headline, this does not exist in the API. And if I run this, it's going to be blank. It says undefined. So similar to Nisreen's problem, she probably mistyped the name of the variable that she was trying to get from the API. So this is what matters. Whenever you're using the API, just got to make sure that you're following the documentation in terms of what they, like how the data is structured when you get the data. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yeah, I got you.
Sweet. Any other questions or like ways, ideas you guys have to improve this, and I can help like guide you in that way? I think I want to add the image to this, so we can spend like 5 minutes adding the image to this if you guys would like. But before that, any other questions regarding this? Oh, awesome that you figured it out, Liv. Sweet. Is everyone good to go? Awesome. So now let's figure out how to get the image. And we can do this once again by looking at the data. So I'm going to inspect, and I'm going to click on the console, and I'm going to go all the way up, clicking on the object, and I'm going to remember how this is structured. So it's object.results, and if I open up any one of these articles, we see all these different variables, but I'm gonna click on multimedia. Multimedia, there's this URL. Oh, what does this URL go to? So I'm going to click on this URL right here, or copy it, and I wanna see where it goes. And if I see this, it looks like, just removing the quotes, it looks like it's an image. So it actually is the same image that is on the New York Times front page for that article. And this is the same image right here. And it's really cool that the API returns all this data. And I want to get this image. And I think it's super cool that if we were able to display this, that'd be dope. So I'm going to go back to my code. And who remembers what is the tag in HTML to add an image to your site? Just commentate or unmute yourself, either way works. Awesome. Okay, so image. So who can tell me what this next line of code that I need to type in to define an image in JavaScript? Just literally type that line of code in JavaScript and in the chat, and I'm going to copy and paste it. So it should be like creating an image element, just how we did for A and the P tags. Awesome. Peter's got it. So I'm really going to copy what he sent, and I'm going to throw that in. And who remembers what is the attribute that images use in HTML to specify the source of the image? What is that attribute called? So like if you look at your personal website, SRC, Peter's on a roll here. So we need to add an attribute that of SRC that goes to the URL of the image. And this is exactly how we're going to do it. The same way we did the image. I mean, the same way we did the link, so the A tag. So image.set attribute. And we got the first parameter is the attribute itself. So it's going to be src, as Peter sent in the chat. And what is that equal to? So if we look at this data once again, you can see we go into our article. So we do article, then it's like dot multimedia, and then there are like 4 or 5 images depending on the article, but we want to get the first one. And that is arrays are zero indexed in JavaScript. So that means that the first element in an array, you can specify by doing it, by accessing it with an index of 0. And you'll see that exactly what I mean by doing this. So if I type in article.multimedia, article.multimedia, once again, is an array of 5. This could be like many different, but we know for a fact the first one is the cover image of the article. So I'm going to do multimedia, and then in brackets, I am going to type in 0. So we're accessing the first element in that array. And I'm doing 0 because, once again, arrays in JavaScript are 0 indexed. And I'm going to do dot. The name of this is URL. So this is the image URL. And there we go. So we set the attribute. And who can tell me what's the last thing we need to do to have this image show up on our web page? Oh my God, Peter's on a roll. Let's go, Peter. Sweet. So I'm gonna add this before the A tag, and I'm gonna run this, and then boom. So if I open this up in a new tab, let's see what we get. Okay, not working. Oh, it's loading, but the images are huge, right? It's crazy. And because they're like being loaded in high definition. So what we can do is we can actually style this. And is there a way we can resize the images? Would that just be through CSS? Exactly in the screen. So we're going to go to our styles. We're going to target all our images, and we're going to give it a height. So I'm going to give it a height of like 200 pixels to start off to see how that looks. And there we go, guys. We have basically a newsreader of New York Times. And this is honestly super cool. So if you go in this website tomorrow morning, you'll see all the latest headlines from the New York Times updated dynamically. If you can just comment got images, just so I can make sure everybody got to this stage, and if we can like help anybody, that would be awesome. I can go back to the code just in case anybody needs it. Awesome, guys. Yeah, I think this is where we can wrap up. But before we wrap up, just want to answer any questions you guys may have. I know this is like a pretty long workshop. Sorry for it going a little over time, but the reason behind this is like this is such an important workshop because literally every single advanced app or website uses an API. So just another example, when you go to like internal APIs as well, right? So right now I can build an app that allows me to get all of someone's latest Instagram feed, like their latest Instagram photos. And I can like, I don't know, edit them and do whatever I want. But that's like an example of an API that's used for, yeah, stalker, my bad. That's a bad example. But what you can do is you can, yeah, oh my God, I got off track. But I better edit this out in the video. But what was I gonna say? So that's an API, so you can fetch data from Instagram and do whatever you want for your app. But Instagram also uses internal APIs. And when they built Instagram, they actually have APIs that are hitting Instagram server to get the feed in JSON. And they get the feed in JSON, and they actually display it the same way we displayed the title, the description, and the image. So if you actually look at what you just built, an Instagram app developer is doing the same thing. They get the data in this JSON format with like the variable names and what the variable is set equal to. It could be an image link, it could be text, it could be a description. And they get the data and they just make it look pretty on your iPhone or on your Android device. And they get this image, they get the title, and they get the description or caption and they just display it on the app. So just want to stress the importance of APIs and how important it is, and how every single app, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they all get this data in JSON or some other format, and they display it on the screen. And that data is from some server or some database that is hosting all this content. And that's why I wanted to like stress about how important this is, because you'll encounter this as you build more advanced apps and websites, and eventually you can build like something cool like your personal dashboard that has like the weather or like to-do lists, or like there are millions of different things. And I'm going to send this in the Discord right now. There is a GitHub repo that has literally hundreds of different APIs that you can use. So you can use like all these different APIs that are in so many different categories. So like food and drink, finance, events, dictionaries. You can like build your own translation app, literally. There are like so many different APIs that are available for free. And I definitely and highly recommend you guys check them out so that you can build your own API-enabled apps and websites. And I think, yeah, this is just like a short intro to APIs. Any other questions, feel free to let us know, and we'll be glad to help. And anything else? Anybody have like any ideas or any suggestions for their like future apps? Or where did Varun go? Okay, I think he left me. But if there are no other questions, I think we can wrap up. Varun's here. Okay, awesome. Yeah, if there are no other questions, we can wrap up. Varun, anything to add?
No, that was an awesome workshop.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm glad so many people made it out. Hope you guys got a lot of value out of it. Sweet. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Varun and I will be around on Discord for a while if you have any questions. And I'm glad I think everybody got it set up and working. But if you want to like beef up your little news reader application, feel free to let us know.
I just posted in the chat like another thing that the New York Times API can do. This is something that I was working on just now as well. Like basically you can also search for stuff as well. So feel free to check that out, and feel free to play with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Varun. Yeah, guys, I just want to remind you that Project 2 was due yesterday. So like the one after your personal website. And I know that some of you were busy over the weekend. That's completely fine. We just would love for you to try and finish it tonight, or at the latest like midday tomorrow, and post that in the ship channel, because the next project is due on Thursday. And this next project, you actually have a combination. You can pick like any project you want. Actually, I'm going to pull up the web super quickly before we leave, just so you guys have an idea of what you can build for your third project. And I'm just going to share my screen once again. And if you take a look at my screen right now, due July 2nd, which is this Thursday, is any one of these projects. So you can build a classifier app that can classify fake news. We can build a to-do app, basically like have a to-do list and keep that on your like website or personal website or something to keep track of. You can build a weather app, which is similar to what we built. So if you want to work more with APIs, I highly recommend you go for this weather app tutorial. So you'll use the same concepts we just learned in this workshop, but you'll build a weather app, and you can fetch the data automatically depending on your location wherever you are. And then there are a couple other projects. Chrome extension, you can build your own Chrome extension to like clip text anywhere on the internet. You can build a text editor, so you can basically build your own version of Microsoft Word that autosaves, and I think that's super cool. It's an awesome project. And then you can also build a web scraper if you'd like to, if you're more like data inclined and you want to be able to like scrape the internet for data and be able to use that. But yeah, guys, that's really all. Thank you so much for coming to this workshop, and can't wait to see what you all build. Naveed, when is the weather workshop? Sorry, it was lagging. Okay, so this is actually the API workshop, and the API workshop covers like 75 to 80% of all the concepts used in the weather app. Actually, it's entirely like overlaps with the weather app. So the same thing, you just use a different API, but you use the same fetch JavaScript functions and things like that. You just use a different API key, and the structure is a little bit different. But if you were able to understand everything that happened in this workshop, you'll have no problem completing the weather workshop. Will there be a workshop for the naive Blaze classifier? Let me check on that real quick. I'm going to check the Enlight calendar. I think Varun is planning, sorry, Max is planning on doing 2 workshops tomorrow. He's doing Python and Pandas tomorrow at 8 p.m. and he's doing Build a Flask App at 9 p.m. So the one at 8 p.m. is really a good introduction to Python and using Python for data science. So definitely go to that if you're interested in the classifier. And I will introduce you to some of the concepts that will be used in that tutorial. And then the Flask app is something that's cool. It allows you to do web development in Python, but so if you've always been more Python inclined and more data inclined, you might want to be able to learn how you can create web-enabled data science projects, and that's what Max will teach you tomorrow. And so there are 2 workshops tomorrow. If you're interested in basically data science fundamentals, go to the Python Pandas workshops. If you're interested in web development and Python's role in it, go for the Flask and build a web app with Flask workshop at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Any other questions? Sweet, guys. I think I'm going to get going. I didn't get a chance to eat dinner, so I'm going to eat dinner now. But I will be around on the Discord, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
No problem.
Thank you.
No problem. If anybody has any questions, they can stick around, and we can chat and sort things out too. Dolan. Varun, what do you think?
Dude, that was hype. That was hype.